The Doomsday Ark and the Annihilation Barge, the best two units in the index. Are you still sure we can't take out vehicles? Nick speaking, and welcome to this video. Right, time for another Win with Necrons video. Today we're going to have a look at the Doomsday Ark and the Annihilation Barge. Before that though, if you would like to keep up to date with the wonders of Warhammer 40k, then please give me a sub and hit the bell button so you don't miss an upload. So in the last video we looked at destroyers and heavy destroyers, and we were particularly answering questions that people have been asking about vehicles in 8th edition and how Necrons don't really have much to deal with them. Well, we're going to continue that theme in this video as we take a look at arguably the best unit in the index without going to Forge World, and we're going to start off with the Doomsday Ark. Check out this card here if you want to find out how to magnetise your Doomsday Ark and Ghost Ark kit. So the Doomsday Ark moves 12 inches at full wounds, and it has 14 wounds. So quite a reasonable amount of wounds. Now obviously as you take damage it does reduce in its stats, but it's still pretty decent movement at 12 inches. Now it does sport obviously a very big gun, but before we're going to get onto the gun we'll have a quick chat about the other stats. Okay, so the Doomsday Ark has a weapon skill of 6. It has a strength 6 and it has a toughness 6. Now toughness 6 doesn't sound that great on a vehicle, does it? And arguably I can see why people would say that, but I think you have to look at it a different way. So with toughness 6 it means that any gun which is strength 5 or less is going to be wounding you on 5s, and wounding on 5s isn't that great. And bearing in mind that the lower strength guns are generally the guns that only do 1 damage, and they're the ones that just ignore your quantum shielding. So small arms fire would at least only be wounding you on 5s. Then you go up in the strength of maybe guns that might be coming in, so obviously strength 6 guns, they're going to be wounding you on 4s, so they've only got a 50% chance of wounding you. And then once you go above strength 6 guns to strength 7, like plasma, or strength 8 missile launchers, strength 9 las cannons, they're the ones that do more than 1 wound damage. And they're the ones that your quantum shielding has a good chance of stopping. So remember, with your quantum shielding, if you get hit with a weapon, let's say a las cannon hits you and it does 4 wounds, that means you have to just roll a dice, and if you roll less than 4, you ignore those wounds totally. Quantum shielding is awesome against those multiple damage weapons. So although yes, it's only toughness 6, I view this toughness 6 is actually pretty powerful on a Necron vehicle with quantum shielding. Now not only that, it has living metal, so every turn you're going to be able to regenerate a lost wound, and of course pop a tomb spider behind it with a fabricator claw and you could be able to gain an extra D3 wounds per turn. So you can make the unit more survivable than it is just by itself. Okay, so continuing on with the stats, it has a leadership of 10, not an initiative of 10, which is what I said in one of the last videos. I of course meant leadership 10. But yeah, leadership 10, just like pretty much every Necron, and a 4+ save, which is where the downside of it comes in. It wouldn't be great if it had a 3+ save, but yeah, a 4+ save, not that great. You've only got a 50% chance of saving it, assuming there's no modifiers coming in. But like I said, you know, at least if those weapons that do give you modifiers are hitting you and they're multiple damage, you've got your quantum shielding there as a backup. So the save not that great, but you know, we can live with it. Necrons! And the only other thing to note, apart from the big gun, which we're going to talk about in a second, is that this is a vehicle which does explode. So yeah, if it basically loses all its wounds, you roll a dice. If you roll a 6, then any unit within 6 inches gets D3 mortal wounds of damage. So just bear that in mind. Right, let's have a look at the juicy part, the gun. Okay, so the gun, the Doomsday Cannon, sounds pretty nasty, doesn't it? And to be fair, it is. So it has 2 ways of shooting. It's got like a low strength and a high strength. Now sadly, even with 8th edition, the high strength one you cannot shoot if you move. So there's none of this, I can move and then reduce my weapon skill, and that also means that with the fly special rule that the unit has, if you do get assaulted and then you move away from the assault, you obviously then can't shoot the big gun because you've been classed as moving. So that is just something to bear in mind. However, even the low strength, the low powered gun is still actually pretty good. It's got 24-inch range, which is pretty normal for Necrons, and then it's strength 8, it's -2 AP, it has a D3 amount of shots, so okay, you may only roll a 1, but all those times you roll 2 or 3, that's not bad. And then it does D3 damage, so once again, okay, it's on a dice roll, but you have the potential to do a reasonable amount of damage with the low powered gun. Now don't forget, on top of that you have the flare arrays. Now there are 2 flare arrays, one on each side of the tank, but you no longer have to have the angle to shoot at a unit. In other words, you can shoot both of those arrays just to one side of the tank at a single unit. You of course can split fire if you want to. So that is something to consider. You've got a reasonable amount of firepower there at that short range, especially if you're within 12 inches, which of course, if you have been assaulted and you're using the fly rule to come out of the assault, okay, you will be shooting on ballistic skill 4+ as opposed to 3+, assuming you're on your correct amount of wounds. But still, it's a reasonable amount of shots coming in, and at least you can do it. You can come out of the assault and you can then shoot, so it helps with the tank defensively. Right, now let's have a look at the big gun. Okay, so the high powered part of the gun is a 72-inch gun, and that is awesome. It's really great to have a long range gun in the army that's pretty powerful. Now, sadly, it still is random in the amount of hits that you get, so it is a D3 hits. It does have a special rule if you're shooting at a unit which has more than 10 models, that goes up to a D6, but both of those, regardless of what you're shooting at, there's a good chance you may only roll a 1 or a 2. So you've got to bear that in mind. Of course, command points, again, you can re-roll if you need to, but yeah, difficult to get the hits through sometimes, especially if you're rolling badly, but it is a dice game, so these things happen. But once you get the hits through, this makes the gun pretty awesome. So it is strength 10, it's -5 AP, and it does D6 wounds. Random, again, unfortunately, I'm not liking the random side of this tank, but that's why you take 2. You always take 2 of these. 1 isn't going to cut the mustard, you want to get 2. But of course, we're talking about normal size point games. If you're playing lower point size games, then yeah, okay, just take 1. But ideally you want 2. That means that if 1 misfires, or does get destroyed, and you've got another one, a backup one, and hopefully at least one of those tanks will roll hot. So if you want an anti-tank unit in your army, then I think the Doomsday Ark is definitely a fantastic option. That's within the Necron index itself. And as I said, if you have 2 of them, now points wise they're around 200 points, so 2 of these is the same price as a monolith, but I think for what they do, I think it's probably a very wise investment into pretty much any Necron force. Now, when you use these, ideally you want to spread them out, so you want one on one side of the table on one flank and one on the other side of the table on the other flank. Do not place them together because there's a danger that if a powerful unit does get in, they're going to be able to take both units out. So if you put one on one side, one on the other side, then you're going to split your enemy's forces, and if at least they do manage to take one out on one side of the table, you've got the other one over on the other side of the table. You're basically more protected by splitting them up than having them actually together, and because of their long range gun, you've got obviously a good range to get right across the board really, even if you are deploying over in the corners of the table. So that's the Doomsday Ark, but what about the Annihilation Barge? Okay, so the Annihilation Barge, I have to say I think this is potentially one of the most underrated units in the Codex. I don't really hear many people talk about it, I don't see many people play it. but I think it's really good, and I think particularly for the points that you pay for it, I think it's really awesome. So we're going to have a look at the stats, but first of all, this is another multi-part kit, so the Annihilation Barge and the Command Barge. And once again, I have a magnetising tutorial on magnetising this kit up. If you're interested, I'll put a card above me so you can go and check that out. Okay, let's have a look at the stats. So the Annihilation Barge comes in with 8 wounds, which is quite nice from the point of view that you don't have any variable stat line. So it's a fixed 8 wounds and it shoots on a 3+ with its ballistic skill, so pretty nice there. It has a good movement of 12 inches, which we're going to talk about a little bit later in the video when we talk about tactics. Now if you do get into assault, it's weapon skill 6 and it has a strength of 5, but ideally you don't really want to be getting into assault with the Annihilation Barge, although it does have the fly special rule. So if you do happen to find yourself in the assault, it does at least mean that you can move it and come out of the assault and still shoot. Because the main gun is an assault gun, it does mean that of course you can move and shoot at your normal ballistic skill, which is really nice. Now it's got 3 attacks, it has its standard leadership 10, and just like the Doomsday Ark, it has a 4+ save, so not a great save. I would love to see a 3+ save on both of these tanks that we've been talking about actually. I mean, the Land Raider's got a 2+ save. Having said that, of course, we do have quantum shielding, which does protect us quite a bit from those heavy damage guns, although light arms fire is our main issue. It does have toughness 6, so a bit like the Doomsday Ark. It does mean, of course, most of those light guns are going to be wounding you on 5s, which does make quite a bit of a difference. Yeah, if you've got a tank like a Predator with loads of heavy bolters and stuff, a good focused fire bout of firing can take one of these Annihilation Barges down quite easily just with your 4+ save, bearing in mind you've only got 8 wounds. Now you do have living metal, so you can regenerate any wounds if you don't get shot down in one turn. And of course, like all vehicles generally, it explodes if you do get totally wiped off the table. Roll a dice, on a 6 explodes, and then that's D3 mortal wounds to any unit within 6 inches of the exploding vehicle. But what we're really interested in is the gun on the ship, and that is a twin Tesla destructor. And this is pretty awesome. So it's 24 inches, and now rather than being twin linked, you get 8 shots. 8 shots. That's a decent amount of shots. Now the gun is still strength 7, which is pretty powerful, and it does mean that if you're going to be shooting at infantry with this gun, and it's a good Dakar tank, and lots of shots coming in against infantry, it does mean that you're going to be wounding on 3s, and if you're shooting at other tanks, I mean if it's a toughness 7 tank, you're going to be wounding on 4s, and of course if it's beyond that you're going to be wounding on 5s. But I would suggest that this is a great tank for either light tanks or for infantry, but particularly for those light tanks, because the sheer number of shots coming through, even if you are wounding on 5s rather than 4s, you are going to get a decent amount of shots, and that's because this unit has the Tesla rule. So any 6s to hit gives you 2 extra hits. You're rolling 8 dice. That's a reasonable amount of shots. I'd imagine most of the time you should get at least 1 or 2 6s. If you get 2 6s, that's 4 extra hits. Yeah, hitting on 3s. So a really good chance of actually doing some damage to both infantry and also to tanks. Now on top of that, you've got the underslung gun, and this is where you definitely want to swap out the Gauze gun that comes with the tank, which is more expensive than the Tesla. You want to put on the Tesla underneath, which is only 13 points as opposed to 20 points for the Gauze. Now the reason for that is it is also an assault gun. So that means you can move this tank and you can shoot both the top gun and the bottom gun at standard ballistic skill, and of course the bottom gun also has the special rule where you've got the Tesla, all those extra hits on 6s. That is quite a nice little Dakar boat there for around 150 points. I think it's pretty awesome for what it does. Now not only is it a shooting machine, but this is actually very fast and very good for grabbing objectives. And unlike the Doomsday Ark, I would actually tell you to use these as a little group, i.e. keep them quite close together. Not close enough that you get multi-assaulted, but close enough so they can work together to grab objectives, especially in the Maelstrom type mission games. What I've done in the past is I've had an Annihilation Barge on one objective, and the idea is you keep all your objectives within 12 inches, and then when it's your turn, if you need to grab an objective which is to the side, you can move the tank which is on that front objective to the second objective, and then you can move your other Annihilation Barge to the objective that you were on. So you've got quite a nice spread of those tanks basically, and if you want to see that in action, I do have a battle report of me using that exact tactic. I'll put a link to that in the description below, stroke a card above me. So yeah, once again, I'd recommend you take these Annihilation Barges in twos. I think they work well together. Try and keep them closer together, unlike the Doomsday Ark, so I'd definitely recommend you keep them apart. Keep them together, but not too close, but you know, within a good amount of inches that they can sort of work as one. And two of those Annihilation Barges shooting into any particular unit will cause quite a lot of trouble, even though they don't have an AP and they only do one point of damage. I think they're actually pretty good. And with that quantum shielding, yes, okay, small arms fire is a problem, but the idea is, as always with Necrons, and any army really, is to have a good amount of distracting units, other more powerful units on the table that's going to take your enemy's attention away from a little Annihilation Barge on the table. Maybe you've got a Nightbringer charging their face, or a big group of flayed ones, etc. So distract your enemy, keep them safe, keep them around cover if you can, and ping ping, shoot away. Right, that's it for this video. Thank you for watching, hope you enjoyed it, and I'll see you in next week's tactical video. Beam me up!